now move to question time. I call Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, President. President, my question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, for how many quarters has Australia been in a per capita recession?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question. As reflected in the national accounts, we have seen slower growth, soft growth, and in fact it's been the decisions of this government to not cut spending like those opposite want to do $315 billion worth of cuts that they've said that they will implement in government that has ensured that our economy keeps growing. And it's actually those opposite, if they were able to implement the policies that they have outlined to the electorate, want to see a recession in this country. Well, we don't, which is why that we've been making those sensible investments to help people with cost of living, whilst getting the budget in better shape by ensuring that we have a surplus, two surpluses. Two surpluses. Those opposite weren't able to deliver one surplus in the decade that they were in government. They got the mugs printed, didn't they? Oh, this would get the Leader of the Opposition to his feet.
Please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
President, it's actually a point of order on direct relevance that gets me to my feet, which is the Minister was asked a very narrowly worded question about how many quarters Australia's been in a per capita recession. Thus far, she's not mentioned recession, per capita, or even really economic growth. Could you draw the Minister to the question?
Senator Birmingham, the Minister has mentioned some of those words, but I will draw her to your question, Minister.
Thank you. And certainly strong population growth and government spending, government investments, sensible government investments have ensured that our economy keeps growing. Those opposite, they're the only people in the country that would be sitting there waiting for the economic data to come out and wishing it be worse than it actually is. We want those opposite shattered on the day that interest rates hold, shattered that would happen. And again, when the national accounts show that our economy continues to grow, even in difficult times like we are facing now with the inflation challenge that we inherited from those opposite. Inflation with a 6 in front of it, Senator Cash. Inflation with a 6 in front of it and on its way up. And inflation now moderating in welcome ways with a 3 in front of it. So our economic plan is working. We are pleased the economy continues to grow and will continue to focus on helping people with cost of living pressures.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Can the Minister inform the Senate how much worse off Australians are after 6 quarters of the Albanese Labor government's per capita recession?
That was the answer.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, we get that the Australian people are doing it tough. We get that inflation remains a big challenge in our economy, which is why we're so pleased that it is moderated, almost halved from when we inherited an inflation challenge that was escalating in this country, not moderating. And so we are pleased about that. But we get that people are doing it tough, which is why we've put in place those sensible cost of living measures to help, like Commonwealth rent assistance, something that you would cut, according to the Shadow Finance Minister. Energy bill rebates, something you would cut. You see it as wasteful spending. All of those investments that we've made to help people through this difficult time, and we accept it is difficult. We accept it is difficult. We would all like inflation to return to band sooner. But our plan is working and we are supporting people through this difficult time.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Birmingham, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, how are 6 quarters of a per capita recession, which have taken the purchasing power of Australian households all the way back to 2017 levels, remotely consistent with the Prime Minister's promise that a Labor government would make Australians better off when in fact they're worse off and they're all the way back at 2017 levels in terms of their purchasing power?
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I am waiting for order. I have called for order, and Senator O'Sullivan, I will use your name in particular. Minister Gallagher, please continue.
Well, President, as we deal with the global inflation challenge that is affecting our economy, we are pleased that inflation moderates under our economic plan. We are pleased that wages have got moving again under our economic plan, something that you want to cut. We are pleased that almost 1 million jobs have been created in the first term of an Albanese government. More people in work, more people earning more, working and keeping more of what they earn. That is important, and we are seeing economic growth continue in this country when other like-minded economies have seen quarters of negative growth. That is not something that we have seen here. We've got a strong labour market. We're seeing inflation moderate. We're seeing wages get moving again. And we acknowledge that it is tough, which is why our cost of living measures, which you have opposed almost exclusively, every single one of them, would be worse off had you been in charge under your economic plan.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon.
And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Can the Minister please detail what the Albanese government is doing to help build more homes, support renters and help people buy a home sooner?
Order. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator, for the question. And Labor senators, the Labor government, the Labor Party, we want every Australian to have safe and secure housing, and we want more Australians to be able to buy their own homes. That's what we want. We want to build, you want to block. That's the difference between those, the coalition between the Coalition and the Greens. These senators want to build houses, you want to block houses being built. We are investing to help build more homes, support renters and help people buy a home sooner. We have set an ambitious goal of building 1.2 million homes by the end of the decade. We've kick-started construction by cutting red tape. We're bringing forward construction of new housing by working with states to bring roads and infrastructure and free up land for housing, training more tradies, funding more apprenticeships, growing the workforce. We've increased rent assistance, and we've helped tens of thousands of Australians get into the market with a deposit of 5% or less and no mortgage insurance. And we are making the biggest investment in social and affordable housing in more than a decade. Now, we want to do more, and we want to deliver more homes for more Australians around the country. But you know what is stopping us? The Greens and the Coalition teaming up once again to block more housing. That's what they've been doing for months and months, and here we go again. We see the coalition between the Greens and the LNP, blocking Labor's plan for more affordable rental housing, blocking Labor's plan to help tens of thousands of people get into the market with a smaller deposit. What we know is that those on this side of the chamber want to build. All you,
Thank you, Minister.
across
The
the
time
chamber
for
down there want to
answering
do
has
is block.
expired. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
Can the Minister please outline how the Albanese Labor government's Housing Australia Future Fund and National Housing Accord programs will address the critical shortage of social and affordable housing, particularly for women and children escaping domestic violence?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Order. Senator McKenzie, that's twice I've called you. Minister.
Thank you. Well, as the Prime Minister announced this morning, the Albanese Labor government will deliver more than 13,700 new social and affordable homes across Australia. The first round of our Housing Australia Future Fund and the National Housing Accord programs will deliver over 4,200 social and 9,522 affordable homes, including 1,300 for women and children escaping family violence and women at risk of homelessness. This round will unlock about $9.2 billion in investment in social and affordable housing across the Commonwealth, state and territory governments and the private and community housing sectors, the biggest investment in social and affordable housing in more than a decade. In our first term, We are supporting more social and affordable housing than those opposite did in their entire decade in office.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
Can the minister explain how the Albanese Labor government's Help to Buy scheme will assist tens of thousands of low and middle-income Australians buy their own home?
Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Sheldon. The Albanese government wants to get more people into the market sooner with a smaller deposit and lower repayments. The Help to Buy scheme will support 40,000 low and middle-income Australians buy their own homes. That's what the Liberals and the Greens are working together to block. That's what they're working together to block. And by doing this, they're playing with the future of tens of thousands of Australians who are on lower middle incomes. And the question I want to ask, when did it become part of Liberal values to stand against home ownership? When did it become part of Liberal values to stand against home ownership? When did it become of Greens values to work with Peter Dutton to prevent home ownership? When did that become part of the Greens values? I mean, the reality is we are seeing this political convenience between the coalition and the Greens, supposedly at opposite ends of the spectrum, but working together to prevent houses being built.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, you consistently claimed that the economy would be in recession if it were not for Labor's spending. Given your willingness to make such forecasts, would inflation and interest rates be lower if not for Labor's spending?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
I just missed the end of the question.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear it. Yes.
Thank you, Senator Cash. I believe that I'm running the Senate and not you. Senator Hume, please just repeat the last part.
Minister, you consistently claimed that the economy would be in recession if it were not for Labor's spending. Given your willingness to make such forecasts, would inflation and interest rates be lower if not for Labor's spending?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
And I thank President, I thank Senator Hume for the question. And I have repeatedly and consistently said that our investments are contributing to the economy continuing to grow. And you could see that from the national accounts. Anyone who has read the national accounts will have seen that public demand is contributing a contributor to economic growth. Now, on the point that Senator Hume makes around inflation, as I said, we inherited inflation with a 6 in front of it. It was increasing when we came to government, and the decisions we have taken in every single budget to implement policies which actually put downward pressure on inflation. So our investments in early education and care, our investments in rent, our energy bill rebates have all, and this comes from the ABS, put downward pressure on inflation. So no, the answer to that is no. The answer to the first question is public spending contributing to growth? Yes, it is. And I will continue to say that because your economic plan is nuts. It's nuts. Your policy, nuts. I mean, it is so out there that you can't even get your head around it. Like, you argue for a contraction of investment and you want to see the economy go into recession because it would suit your political purposes. But it would be terrible for the economy. It would be terrible for households. So we have made decisions based on what is in the interests of households around this country, of families sitting around trying to make ends meet, and that is why we've repaired the budget, delivered surpluses, invested in cost of living relief and put the future markers down for growth. And you, on those opposite, oppose every single step.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Given, Minister, you attribute Labor's spending to keeping the economy out of recession, can you advise if the economy would be in recession if net overseas migration were not at record levels?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
Population growth has contributed to economic growth in this country for a long time. That is not unusual. And as I said in my answer to Senator Birmingham, population growth and public demand are contributing to our economy growing. And it's important that our economy grows, because if it wasn't growing, it would mean households were doing it exceptionally tough, and that it would be a much harder job to get out of. Now, we are focused on supporting economic growth in this country, and not only through our investments directly into households, but through other measures to make sure that wages get moving again, to support women and women getting back into work if they choose to do it, and ensuring we're closing the gender pay gap, to ensuring we're building houses so essential workers can live close to where they work. All of these things are interconnected, and all of these things are things that you oppose, including, crazily, a future made in Australia. How could you be opposed to a future made in Australia? But you are. You are.
Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Minister, aside from record levels of Labor spending and along with record levels of migration, is there anything else that's keeping the Australian economy out of recession after 3 Labor budgets?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Gallagher.
The biggest danger to the Australian economy at the moment is the federal opposition, because they're opposed to a future made in Australia. They're opposed to the net zero transition and all of the certainty that's required about the energy transition. Opposed to that. You want all this uncertainty and all this division because you actually don't want the economy to go well. And on top of that, on top of all of that, you want to cut $315 billion. You want to cut pensions. You want to cut rent assistance. You want to cut the pensions of sole parent families in this country. You want to cut all of that. Well, we've heard you, Senator Hume. We've heard you. It's $315 billion that the coalition would not have committed to and didn't commit to. That is the money that you want to cut from this budget, and that means people on pensions, people on sole parent pensions, indexation, Commonwealth rent assistance, all of that, the slash and burn that we know that you're waiting to do will happen.
Thank you, Minister. Just a moment, Senator Faruqi. Senator McKenzie, Senator Hughes and Senator Hume, I do not intend to spend the whole of question timing calling you to order. You are being disrespectful. You are yelling louder than the minister who was on her feet, and I'm asking you to listen in respectful silence. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong, representing the Prime Minister. We are in a rental and housing crisis, but instead of negotiating with the Greens to freeze and cap rents and end billions of dollars in tax handouts to wealthy property developers, investors and speculators that are preventing people buying their first home, the government is pulling a political stunt by trying to force your housing bill on for a vote today. Minister, given your bill can only at best help 0.2% of renters while pushing up house prices for everyone else, why won't you join with the Greens to end negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts that are stopping renters from buying a home?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Before I call the minister, order. I'm going to remind all senators that Senator Faruqi had the right to ask her question in silence. I now am asking all senators to listen to Senator Faruqi. That does not give you the right to then call out. I'm asking all senators to listen in respectful silence. Minister Wong.
I think the real question, Senator Faruqi, is how a party that professes to be progressive works with Peter Dutton to block more houses being built. How does a party that professes to be progressive and to stand up for those who are in trouble, those who are doing it tough, work with Peter Dutton to stop a Labor government building more houses? That is the real question. What is it about your political opportunism that you would be prepared to work with Peter Dutton, Mr Dutton, to stop houses being built? And you sit in silence because you know it's true. You sit in silence because you know it's true, and that this is all about your political campaign, thinking that you can peel votes off. It's not actually about helping Australians who need help with housing. That is what is so appalling and hypocritical about the Greens political party, is they come in here and they tell us, oh, you're the two major parties, we're the ones that care about people, we're the ones that actually care, but they come in here with the most cynical of political acts, and teaming up with Mr Dutton, who is not known for his support for social housing, who is not known for his support for affordable housing, who is not known for his support for anything positive for the Australian people, and you empower him. You empower him. And then you come in here and tell us, oh, you're not doing what we want, so we're going to vote no.
Minister
I mean, give us all a break, really. Really. I mean, I think it is patently self-evident to everybody in this chamber the cynical political tactics that the Greens are engaging in. You know, what you should do is come in and vote for the bill, and then people will take you seriously when it comes to housing.
Thank you, Minister. Just a moment, Senator Faruqi. I have not called you. I called for order, and yet most of you in this chamber were incredibly disrespectful. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Minister, Labor has finally announced some of the Housing Australia Future Fund will be allocated to developers, but still not one single home has been built. Minister, can you guarantee a single one of these houses will be built before the election?
Order. Minister Wong.
So let me get this clear, Senator Faruqi. You and your party.
Senator Hanson-Young.
I'd just like to remind the Leader of the Government to speak through the chair. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
So Senator Faruqi who is part of a party that has opposed, blocked, voted against and campaigned against Labor's policies on housing, now comes in here complaining about delays. Just so everybody is really clear, this is what they are doing. I mean, they have consistently voted against the government's policies to increase home ownership. They've consistently voted against government's policies to put a roof over the heads of Australians. They voted with Mr Dutton to delay the Housing Australia Future Fund's 30,000 new social and affordable housing. Can you believe that? The Greens political party voted against social and affordable housing. It only has to be said for people to see how extraordinary it is. And of course we know across the country the Greens are blocking housing developments. I'm very happy to talk about some of those statements.
Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Yeah, it's fine if the minister doesn't want to answer the questions. I know why, because they don't have a leg to stand on. Minister, the majority of the homes that have been allocated funding so far from the HAF are so-called affordable homes. However, given their rents are set at 75% of severely unaffordable market rents, how many of these homes will be genuinely affordable to low-income renters?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Thank you. Well, I noticed that a member of the Nationals Party, Senator Mackenzie, is congratulating Senator Faruqi on a great question, and that really does demonstrate the political marriage which is on display, a marriage of political convenience, which is all about blocking. What I would say is this, Senator Faruqi. We have announced today 13,700 social and affordable homes through the first round of the Housing Australia Future Fund. This is the biggest one-off delivery of social housing in over a decade. It will provide, amongst other things, 1,200 homes for women and children escaping domestic violence and older women at risk of homelessness. We would have been able to announce this sooner, and we would have been able to progress these projects sooner if you had not worked with Mr Dutton to delay the HAF. So please remember that next time you stand up and talk about social housing.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Just as the Albanese Labor government has delivered cost of living relief as part of every federal budget, we've also made significant commitments to housing because we know how important it is in providing stability and economic security for all Australians. The Albanese Labor government is building more homes more quickly in every part of the country. Can the minister please outline the housing policies we have already delivered and other commitments that have been budgeted for? How will these policies make home ownership a reality for more Australians?
Order. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Bragg, which part of order does not apply to you? Senator, please resume your seat. Senator McKenzie, I do not intend to call your name again. I will use 203. You've been warned. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, President. I thank Senator Smith for that question and for her very good contribution just before question time, which really did sum up the state of this chamber and its approach to the housing challenges in this country. We have made, as Senator Smith has outlined, we have made contributions to addressing the housing challenge in every single budget since we came to government. After a decade of neglect, and let's not forget those opposites' responsibility in some of the challenges in the housing market at the moment.
Bragg.
After a decade of neglect where I don't even think they had a housing minister for quite a long period of time, let alone anyone in cabinet representing it. And their single housing policy was one of Senator Bragg's favourite. I think it was raid your super. His answer to every challenge across Australia at the moment is raid your super. Let it rip. Let's just raid the super. But in the government, every single budget, in our first budget, we committed to the Housing Australia Future Fund, which unfortunately was delayed in this chamber for a long period of time. We invested in Help to Buy. We put in a very significant package for Indigenous housing in the Northern Territory. And of course we had a measure which supported pensioners looking to downsize to deal with some of the financial impact of that. In the second budget, we increased Commonwealth rent assistance, something that those opposite would chop. Committed another $100 million for remote housing in the Northern Territory. We've encouraged investment through measures for build to rent, and we boosted homelessness funding by $67.5 million. And in the third budget, our third opportunity to build on that program, that ambitious program of housing, we put more money into the housing support program. We got a national agreement on social housing and homelessness. We funded new places in TAFE for construction. We got concessional finance for community housing providers and further investments in rent assistance and remote housing.
Has expired. Senator Marielle Smith, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Labor's housing policies will transform the lives of so many Australians. This includes the lives of women and children escaping domestic violence and older women at risk of homelessness. Why is it crucial that the Senate support government housing policies to ensure all Australians have a roof over their head?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Smith, and for the focus of your question on women and children escaping domestic violence, because this is an important part of our government's housing policies. We have been trying to make sure that we have a measure that covers a whole range of areas on the housing scale, and one of them is the pressure that women and children have, often with accompanying children have, leaving violent relationships. And so of the housing that the Prime Minister announced today, over 1,200 homes announced by the PM today will be for women and children escaping domestic violence and older women at risk of homelessness. And we know that's another area where women, often when marriages broke down and children have left home and there are not a lot of financial assets, find themselves in that precarious position. This government's policies are aiming to support all of those women who find themselves in that position, and this Senate should do its job and support positive housing policies that will make a difference, not only for this generation but future generations.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Whether you live in social housing, whether you're a renter or whether you're hoping to buy your first home, we know housing is a challenge for so many Australians. You've outlined action the government is taking to alleviate housing stress, and with a continuing housing crisis driven by a decade of inaction from the former coalition government, what are the biggest threats to improvements in housing affordability in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Smith. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, Senator Smith, for that question. Well, the biggest I forgot my line. The biggest challenge to housing in this country are the blockers. They are. They're the blockers in this chamber. When we've moved to have a shared equity scheme, The Greens also had a shared equity scheme in the last election. They wanted a shared equity scheme. We're trying to deliver that and they are opposed to it. The Liberals, the Coalition, have said they'll oppose the HAF. They've said that they will look to cut back on things like Commonwealth rent assistance, all of these important measures that go to building our housing agenda, making sure we've got enough housing and making sure we're supporting people who can't afford it into more affordable housing, and making sure the homelessness and social housing sector also have opportunities to build their stock so that they can support people into those forms of housing as well. But the blockers in this chamber are the biggest challenges we've got.
Answering has expired. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Minister, during evening and morning peak hours, electricity generation from industrial solar and wind averages just 10% of rated capacity because solar doesn't work in the dark and wind goes quiet at night. Big batteries can transfer electricity from daytime to the evening peak. Minister, how much battery capacity is your government planning to build to maintain electricity supply between sunset and sunrise?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President, and I thank Senator Roberts for the question. Well, the Senator is right to point to the fact that Australia's electricity system is changing. We have, as I think most senators understand, a fleet of ageing coal-fired power stations that require replacement, and I can tell you they are not getting any more reliable. They are not getting any more reliable. And in fact, over the last year, I don't think there's been a day when we haven't had a circumstance where at least one of the coal-fired power generators in the national electricity market has been offline for one kind of maintenance or another. And of course, this arises because we went through nearly a decade when the Coalition, while in government, did not land an energy policy. 22 policies, none of them landed. And our task
Minister
as
McAllister,
government—
please resume your seat. Senator Roberts.
Point of order, President. Standing Order 72.3c says answers shall be directly relevant to each question. I asked about battery capacity, how much battery capacity your government is planning to build to maintain electricity supply between sunset and sunrise.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. I will draw the minister to your question. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. And of course, our task is actually to restore some measure of order to the energy system so that the investors—
Order on my left.
The investors who build the generation capacity that is necessary to power homes and businesses have the confidence to invest. And that is what the Capacity Investment Scheme has been designed to do. We have just been through a round of the Capacity Investment Scheme where we received very significant and committed to underwriting very significant battery capacity, because we do understand the significance of this technology. What the experts tell us is the most cost-effective way to establish the national energy market that can meet the energy requirements of Australian homes and businesses is a combination of wind, of solar, of batteries and of gas. And that is the policy settings that we're putting in place to meet those requirements.
Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Minister, you couldn't tell me the battery capacity your government is planning to build, so you may not be able to answer this question. But let's just say yes or no, please. What is the capital cost of that battery backup, and how much of that bill will taxpayers pay? Simple.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. I'll just wait for silence, particularly on my left. This is Senator Roberts' question. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, as I have indicated previously to questions asked by Senator Roberts in this chamber, the cost of the transition is regularly estimated out to 2050 by AEMO, and it is included in the Integrated System Plan, which is regularly published and updated. Different states have different arrangements in terms of the ownership and investment in generation, and so the investment that will take place will look different depending on the ownership arrangements that are in place across the national electricity market. However,
Senator
we
Ruston.
understand that there is a measure of support required from the Commonwealth Government, and it is why we have put in place a capacity investment scheme which aims to provide support for those who are seeking to invest in new capacity, whether it is in batteries or other forms of generation in the national electricity market.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. So the minister cannot tell us the battery capacity required, nor the capital cost of that battery backup. So, Minister, AEMO is working off a figure of 60 gigawatt-hours of storage at around $1 billion an hour, which is $60 billion. Minister, how much will electricity prices and supermarket prices rise as a result of having to spend this staggering amount of money?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister McAllister.
Thanks very much, President. Well, the one thing I can say is that the cost that we will take advice from the experts about the optimal investment that's necessary to build out the national electricity market. And it's a different approach than the one taken by those opposite, because right now we have a coalition government whose plan is to invest taxpayers' money in the most expensive
Minister, please
form.
resume your seat. I'm waiting, Senator McKenzie. Senator Roberts.
Point of order, relevance. I didn't ask about the coalition government, as you said. I asked about the Labor government now.
I will draw the minister to your question, Senator Roberts, and while I have the attention of the chamber, I will ask those senators, particularly on my left, to listen in respectful silence. Minister McAllister. Senator Thorpe, that includes you. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thanks very much, President. A senator asks about our plans, and the Capacity Investment Scheme will deliver 32 gigawatts of renewable and clean dispatchable capacity to fill emerging reliability gaps. And the truth is that that will put downward pressure on prices, because one of the consequences of the failed policies of those opposite is that we do have capacity capabilities that need to be filled, because energy capacity is leaving the market and it has not been replaced, and we are taking the steps necessary to replace it.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash.
Thank you very much. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. In July of this year, Prime Minister Albanese pretended to act surprised when revelations about the CFMEU's links with criminal activity were unearthed.
Senator Watt.
Today we saw a whistleblower, Andrew Quirk, confirm that the Prime Minister knew about the links between your donors in the CFMEU and bikie gangs and criminal syndicates more than 10 years ago. The whistleblower personally told the now Prime Minister of his concerns. Can the minister please confirm that Mr Albanese has been well aware of the CFMEU's link with criminal activity, corruption, bullying and harassment and standover tactics for at least 10 years?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I did see those reports, and I went and had a look at what was on the public record about these matters. And I tell you what I can confirm, Senator. I can confirm that these matters were made public, including on the 7:30 report, in 2015, and when you the year in which you became the responsible minister. The year in which you became the responsible minister. So what we have is the person who had responsibility.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Order across the chamber, particularly Senators Watt and Cash. Senator Birmingham, I'm just calling the Senate to order. You are not immune to 203. I would hate to draw your attention to it. You are the leader of a party, but when I call the chamber to order, you need to be listening. Minister, please continue. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you, President. We are reminded, of course, that it was the coalition which was in government when this became public, not through any meetings, but on the 7:30 report. What I would say to Senator Cash is perhaps if your government had been less focused on playing politics on a royal commission, which was all about attacking the Labor Party and the trade union movement. Maybe if you paid more attention to what was already public, you might have actually had the courage to do what the Prime Minister has done. Which is to take the strongest action against organised crime, violence and thuggery in the trade union movement that could be taken. And we do so not because we are anti-union, we are pro-union. We do so because we believe trade unionists and workers deserve far better than the thuggery, corruption and violent association with criminals that we have seen. Unfortunately, those opposites spent so much time in government playing a political agenda and trying to attack the Labor Party and the Labor movement. They actually didn't do the job that they should have done.
Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. And given that the Prime Minister clearly knew about the CFMEU's culture of corruption, bullying, standover tactics, law-breaking and links with the criminal underworld for more than 10 years, why did the Prime Minister, on behalf of the Labor Party, accept more than $6.2 million of donations from the CFMEU since becoming leader in 2019?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Order. Minister Wong, please. I'm calling you. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Why did the Liberal Party, which was in government in New South Wales and federally, do nothing to investigate these allegations? Senator Cash, you were minister, I think, in September of that year when these allegations were public. Why did you do nothing about those allegations? Why is it that the Hayden Royal Commission, which was set up by the Coalition, did nothing to investigate these allegations? The Prime Minister has taken stronger action against the CFMEU than any Prime Minister and any minister has. As much as you might like to try and tell us that you are tough on the CFMEU, it is the Prime Minister who has put the Construction Division into administration, more strong action than any government has ever taken, and, of course, the Prime Minister, as leader, expelled John Secker from the Labor Party.
Has expired. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. And again, given that the Prime Minister of Australia clearly knew about the CFMEU's culture of corruption, bullying, standover tactics, law breakings and links with the criminal underworld for more than 10 years, why did he give the CFMEU control of the construction sector in Australia when he abolished the Australian Building and Construction Commission?
Minister Wong.
So this is the ABCC, which, by your own admission, did nothing in relation to these allegations. So just so we're clear, this is the ABCC, which you tout as the great cop on the beat, which did nothing in relation to the allegations which were public in 2015. I mean, the reality is, Senator Cash, this government and this Prime Minister have taken stronger action to stamp out criminal conduct in the CFMEU than any government ever has. And we've done so because we are the Labor Party and we believe in the principles of trade unionism, and they do not extend to corruption, violence and organised crime. What you did was try and go after workers. You did is to try and go after the principle of trade unions, and what you did was to try and go after the Labor Party, and you were so focused on that political agenda you didn't actually do the job you should have done.
Just a moment, Senator Waters. Senator Cash, I called you a number of times during the minister's response. You paid no attention. Senator Cash, you're not in a debate with me. You paid no attention to me. Your running commentary while the minister was answering was incredibly disrespectful. Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to the Special Minister of State, Minister Farrell. Prime Minister Albanese made big promises about transparency and accountability before coming into government, but we have been waiting over 2 years, and despite what Labor keeps telling the media, we are still yet to see any electoral reform legislation from this government. The Greens have been calling for changes to our donation laws for decades, and in this parliament Labor has a crossbench ready to progress genuine electoral reform. Minister, will you keep your election commitment to improve our democracy, or will you instead stitch up a deal with the LNP to benefit the flagging two-party system?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Waters, for your very important question. You're correct. The Prime Minister did make undertakings to improve transparency and accountability in our electoral system, and as you would be aware, a process was gone through in the relevant committee to examine a variety of proposals in respect to electoral reforms, and they did include aspects to deal with accountability and transparency, and also regulating the amount of money that can be spent on the Australian electoral system. And it's true that we have not yet presented that legislation to the Parliament, but one of the things I've tried to do over the period that we've been in government is to consult with all of the parties, and we've certainly been doing that with you. We've had direct personal meetings on these issues, and your leader and his relevant staff have also been involved in all of those negotiations. And I'm very happy to talk to anybody in this place who wants to discuss electoral reform. It has taken longer than I would have liked, but sometimes in this place, to get the best results, you do have to take longer than you otherwise would like. Politics, yes, well, that's true. You can laugh, Senator Cash, but you can laugh, Senator Cash, but politics is the art. Politics is the art of the possible. I continue to have hope that through the lengthy discussions that I'm involved in, we'll get a result.
Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Fossil fuel companies and their lobbyists are donating millions to both big parties. And in return, the Albanese government continues the bipartisan tradition of giving $10 billion of public money every year in fossil fuel subsidies, turbocharging the climate destruction. Will you ban donations from fossil fuel corporations and other sectors with a track record of buying influence so that politics can work for the public interest and not the highest bidder?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Waters for her first supplementary question. Look, Senator, I reject the premise of your question. The High Court routinely makes it very clear that organisations in this country are entitled to make donations to political parties. My objective in all of the discussions that I'm involved in at the moment is to try and put downward pressure on the amount of money that's being spent by rich actors in the political process. I think we have one opportunity to do this. The idea that at the last federal election somebody like Clive Palmer could spend $117 million.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. We're in an election season and we've already seen widespread mis- and disinformation campaigns. South Australia and the ACT already have truth in political advertising laws, which are generally supported and have reshaped electoral campaigning in those jurisdictions. Will the Albanese government work with the Greens and the crossbench to deliver truth in political advertising laws?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Waters, for her second question. Look, I'm very happy. As you know, I have been meeting with you, Senator Waters. It's not as if there haven't been meetings, and I routinely meet with anybody in this place who wants to have a discussion about electoral reform. Just Senator Pocock's not in the other Senator Pocock is not in the room, but he grabbed me the other day. He said, "Don, can I talk about this?" And I stopped and I talked to him about it. But the Parliament has a range of political actors, and my job is not just to talk to the Greens or not just to talk to elements of the crossbench. My job is to talk to the whole Parliament, including my own colleagues
Minister,
here.
the time for answering has expired. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing and Homelessness, Senator Farrell. Safe and affordable housing is central to the security and dignity of Australians, but Australians don't have enough homes Australia doesn't have enough homes and hasn't for a long time. We have an ambitious national goal of building 1.2 million homes by the end of the decade. But how is the Albanese Labor government working to take housing pressures off Australians by building more homes more quickly?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and can I thank Senator Stewart for her question. I know she has a great interest in housing and homelessness issues in the great state of Victoria. And, of course, today the government has announced investment in more than 13,700 new social and affordable homes across Australia. It shows that, yes, the Commonwealth is back in the game of directly supporting new housing rights right across the country. After a decade of the coalition failing Australians at the Commonwealth level, this is the biggest investment in social and affordable housing in over a decade. We want more homes because that will reduce long-term rental queues across the country and make renting more affordable for everyone. We know the importance of having a roof over your head. Our Prime Minister is a testament to that story. His entire life was changed by his ability to access secure housing. And the industry supports our announcement. Today, the Community Housing Industry Association said that this announcement represents solid progress we wholeheartedly commend. While the Property Council said the announcement of funding for nearly 14,000 social and affordable homes will transform the lives of many Australians who dream of a home of their own. The Albanese Labor government is committed to building more homes, more affordable homes, and we are getting on with the job just as we are with electoral reform.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Social and affordable homes in particular are a central part of the government's $32 billion Home for Australians plan. How is the Albanese Labor government increasing the supply of social and affordable homes across Australia, and what is standing in the way of building more homes more quickly around Australia?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Stewart for her first supplementary question. The first round of Labor's Housing Australia Future Fund and the National Housing Accord programs will deliver 4,220 social homes and 9,522 affordable homes. Really, truly. The program, if only you'd vote for it, the program will unlock $9.2 billion worth of investment in social and affordable housing across the Commonwealth, the state and the territory governments, and the private and the community housing sectors. The risk is that the investments are right here in this chamber. The Liberal and the National have already briefed the good journalists from The Australian on how it intends to abolish the Housing Affordable Fund if it was to form government.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. It was recently seen that under this government's expanded home guarantee scheme, twice as many Australians have been able to get into their first home compared to under the former government. How is the Albanese Labor government working to make it easier for first home buyers to buy a house? And I'm curious as to what's standing in the way.
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President. And can I thank Senator Stewart for her second supplementary question. Unfortunately, Senator Stewart, I have to tell you that the reality is for most first home buyers do struggle to enter the housing market. The federal government, through the Help to Buy scheme, is ensuring that people on lower and middle incomes can come up with that deposit sooner and get their foot in the door of their own place sooner. These are the early childhood educators, the cleaners, the paramedics, the carers, everyone who we rely on a daily basis. This is about getting them into their own home. So I say to the Coalition and the Greens, let's get this done. Let's help 40,000 lower and middle income Australians to get into the ladder, and let's do it right now.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Mackenzie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. Geoffrey Watson SC's interim report investigating unlawful behaviour in the CFMEU released this morning has confirmed the recent revelations of corruption, criminality, violence and intimidation on CFMEU worksites. Australian taxpayers and home buyers are paying more for infrastructure and apartments as a result of the CFMEU's behaviour. The investigation found CFMEU officials had switched employment from the union to paid employment with employers and I quote, remained on the same sites with more or less the same authority. If the CFMEU management has lost control of the union, why does the CFMEU boss, who opposed the administration, still have his job with the union?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Well, thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Thank you, President, for the question. I would make the point, Senator, that the government has taken the strongest possible action to clean up the CFMEU. I would also make the point that we have asked the Fair Work Ombudsman to undertake a targeted review of all enterprise agreements made by the Victorian branch of the construction division of the CFMEU that apply to big build projects. We have requested the AFP investigate recent allegations and work cooperatively with state police to investigate and prosecute any criminal breaches. And we will use procurement powers to ensure that enterprise agreements on government-funded projects are genuine and that workplaces are free from coercion and intimidation. As you would know, we've also introduced new requirements on states and territories as part of the Commonwealth's funding agreement for projects delivered under the National Land Transport Act and reinforced assurances on Commonwealth-funded projects. These and other measures are all part of the government's response, which is the strongest response any government has taken in relation to the allegations of corruption, intimidation and organised crimes involvement in this union.
Senator Mackenzie, first supplementary.
Mr Watson's investigation reported, and I quote, I was told that almost all of the people on the list remained with the same employer in a different capacity. For example, switching from paid employment as a union delegate to paid employment working for the employer directly as a health and safety officer. What is the government doing to ensure bikies and criminals in the CFMEU are not able to hold positions of responsibility on publicly funded infrastructure and housing projects just by switching employment?
Senator Mackenzie, time has expired. Minister Wong.
Senator, I refer you to my first answer. Again, we've introduced new requirements on states and territories as part of the Commonwealth funding agreement for projects delivered under the Land Transport Act. This is also included embedding protections in the new Federation funding agreement with states and territories outlining their shared responsibility to ensure value for money for public.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Mackenzie, I have cautioned you before. You don't stand up and call out. I will come to you. So, Senator Mackenzie.
On a point of order, Madam President, on direct relevance, this question was about administration of the CFMEU as the government policy not having an impact on the sons of sector remaining on construction work sites.
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. The minister is being relevant to your question and I'll continue to listen carefully. Minister Wong.
Of order. I mean, administration is the strongest action that government could have taken. and it is correct that that has to be accompanied by a range of measures to deal with this this problem. I have outlined some of them. I'm sure that more work needs to be undertaken, but we are very clear that intimidation and violence and criminal activity have no place inside Australia's trade union movement, and we've acted accordingly.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Mackenzie, second supplementary.
Minister, under the government CFMEU administration scheme, the communist that was put in charge of fixing the Victorian CFMEU branch has been forced out, and the investigator has found nothing has changed. Will you now admit that Labor's policies of putting the CFMEU into administration is not working and Australia needs to re-establish the ABCC?
Thank you, Senator Mackenzie. Minister Wong.
Well, this is the ABCC, President, which wasn't effective in dealing with this. This is the ABCC, which was in place during the period that the sorts of issues that you're referring to continued to worsen, as Senator Cash's question today demonstrates. So what I would say is the administrator has sacked, I think, a dozen people. We've seen others where action is being taken. I've outlined certain funding arrangements which we are putting in place, and we will continue to do what this Prime Minister has been very clear about, which is we will stand up against corruption, intimidation and organised crime inside the Labor movement.
Senator Green.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Local Government, Senator Watt. At the last election, the Albanese Labor government promised to help more Australians access more social and affordable housing. I regularly hear from constituents in regional areas of our home state of Queensland who want to own their own home but are struggling to save the deposit. How is the Albanese Labor government's ambitious housing agenda helping regional Australians buy their first home?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Green, who's providing some real representation for people in regional Australia. Now, we know that home ownership has long been a dream for many Australians, but many right now it's becoming harder, especially after a decade of neglect by the Coalition. When we came to office, new home builds were at their lowest level in nearly a decade, and Australians are still paying the price for this absence of action under the Coalition. It means that Australians are facing immense stress about where they're going to live and what they can afford to pay. And what it means, particularly for regional communities, is that people are being priced out of their hometowns, and skilled workers who could be filling skill shortages are unable to move to the regions because there's nowhere for them to live. Now, of course, this problem began under the Coalition government, and under the Albanese Labor government, things are beginning to change. Today's Housing Australia Future Fund announcement will see 3,000 social and affordable homes built outside of Australia's capital cities. It's part of the largest investment in social and affordable housing in a decade, and we're helping regional Australians whether they're renting or buying. We've supported more than 18,000 regional Australians to buy their own homes, including 13,000 who have accessed the Regional First Home Buyer Guarantee. We've made the biggest rent increases to rent assistance in more than 30 years, which is providing relief to more than 1 million households, and we're strengthening renters' rights through what we're calling a better deal for renters. After a decade of inaction by the Coalition, our government is getting building moving again, especially for people living in our regions.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Well, last year the Albanese Labor government announced its plan to support Australians to buy their first home with the Help to Buy scheme. I note that the only solution offered by Mr Dutton and the Liberals and Nationals is to raid the superannuation savings of hard-working regional Australians. How will the Albanese Labor government's Help to Buy scheme bring home ownership back in reach for regional Australians without forcing them to raid their retirement earnings?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Green. It is always interesting what we hear.
Senator Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Birmingham.
Thanks, President. Point of order under Standing Order 73-2. The chamber has spent extensive time today already debating specifically the Help to Buy scheme.
Order.
There have been many questions on housing that have not gone specifically to it during question time. However, the question just asked does specifically go to it and goes to that scheme at a time when it is before the chamber on this very day. So whilst this standing order may be quite narrowly interpreted, I believe it is definitely within the grounds for you to interpret this question as being out of order.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. I'll just go to Minister Wong.
It does say something, if we would speak. On the point of order, President, on the point of order, it does say something that the coalition doesn't even want to talk about, the fact that we're doing this. But I'm sure, Senator President, that Senator Watt can answer appropriately, recognising that this is a matter before the Senate. And if the Leader of the Opposition is saying that this might actually be an open question before the Senate, that certainly would be news. That certainly would be news.
Thank you, Minister. Order. 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 I am advised that the answer to that question should not go to the general provisions of the bill, but can certainly explore the policy parameters. So I will continue to listen closely to the minister's answer, and I would invite him to continue his answer.
President, I know the coalition doesn't like to ask me questions, but I'm pretty offended that you won't let me take questions from the government about topics as well, especially when they're about matters as important as housing in Australia. Now, we understand, the Albanese government understands, that working and middle-class families in the suburbs and the regions are doing it tough right now.
Order. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. We understand that working and middle-class families in Australia's suburbs and regions are doing it tough right now. Take, for example, a young family living on the outskirts of Cairns or Nowra, earning $100,000 a year, unable to buy their own home, stuck in the rental market, and they're seeing home ownership fall further out of reach. But in the meantime, they look at the people who they think of as their so-called friends, the friends of the regions being the members of the coalition. Now, what have they done to help families in places like Cairns and Nowra and the Hunter and all those other regional Australia parts of the regions? They've done absolutely nothing. They have voted against our Housing Australia Future Fund, they voted against rent assistance, and now they're trying to prevent people buying.
Senator Green, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Many young people, Minister, in regional Australia are struggling to save for a deposit. But now we know that the Greens political party have teamed up with Mr Dutton to block meaningful housing reform. What are the key barriers preventing young regional Australians from purchasing their first home? And how will the Albanese Labor government's policies, including Help to Buy, support young people into home ownership?
Thank you, Senator Green. I will call for order before I call the minister. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, ironically, the group that's preventing young regional Australians from purchasing their first home are the party that say they're for young people, the Greens Party. Of course, the Greens Party, we know, are more interested in grandstanding than delivering real change, more interested in social media than social housing, more interested in clicks on social media than bricks on slabs. They've been campaigning against new housing developments in Brisbane, and now they're campaigning against housing legislation down here in Canberra. And again, we see the Greens in league with Peter Dutton and the Coalition to block young renters from buying their own home. We need to remember that every time the Greens vote against Labor's housing measures, they make it harder for young people. They make it harder for renters to be able to get their own home. And every time the Greens Party joins with the Coalition to attack and undermine Labor, they block housing and they help Peter Dutton. That is what you are about, is about blocking housing, making life harder for young people and helping the people over there.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.